What's good, everybody? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by DistroKid. They are the go-to for digital music distribution and the easiest way for musicians to get their music onto Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, TikTok, YouTube, and more. They offer unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of their earnings, getting your music onto platforms and into stores 10 to 20 times faster than any other distributor. They help with cover song clearance, automatic splits, and they offer all kinds of tools and templates to help you get the most visibility for your releases. I dig this company and appreciate their business model that offers more features and tools than any other distributor while doing it at the most affordable price for solo artists, bands, DJs, studio artists, and any other creators that are making music or producing music in their home, and they offer label services as well. They've got 3 different tiers that they offer to creators that start as low as $22.99 a year. That's just $1.92 a month. And even their top tier is only $7.50 per month. And the best part about DistroKid sponsoring the podcast is they are offering Dan Cable Presents listeners 30% off their first year of service with DistroKid, making their affordable prices even cheaper for you. I will put that discount link in the episode notes. It will also be in my Instagram bio. Big shout out to DistroKid for sponsoring this podcast for more than 3 years now. Much appreciated. Now let's get into the episode.
Look down at the
What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dan Cable Presents podcast. Thank you for tuning into the program once again. If this is your first time listening, thanks for checking out the show. You can find fresh episodes coming at you on Tuesdays. Right now, we are on a bi-weekly schedule, and that will continue on until December when I wrap up my touring this fall, and then we will be back. We will be back. Sorry, I glitched. We will be back to that weekly show, and thanks for everybody tuning in. If you want to support this thing in a free way, you can click write review a podcast. I don't know how to talk anymore, guys. I left the state for about a month, and I'm trying to just ease back into my setup here, and I just don't. It's not a part of the routine as of late, so I am just struggling through this intro. I think this is the take four I've done maybe on the intro. But anyway, if you want to help support this thing in a free way, you can do so by clicking subscribe on iTunes, clicking write a review, giving the podcast 5 stars if you feel like it is deserving of so, and that will help propel the thing into the tops of those iTunes charts, which will give it more visibility on the national and international levels, helping strangers find the podcast. Just a great way to contribute to the growth and sustainability of this thing, and appreciate the hell out of all the folks that have already taken the time to do so. If you're not listening on Apple, just give it 5 stars on Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube there, leave a comment. I don't know. Check out the new Tuna Boy episode. The first official Tuna Boy episode is up there on the Primetime Cable YouTube channel, where this here podcast is also hosted, and really excited for how that came out. If you haven't checked it out yet, it only runs like 9 minutes, so it's not a big time commitment, and I would love if you checked it out and if you let me know what you think about it, because I just had I had an absolute blast making that first episode with my friends, and just excited to hopefully film a couple more, at least one more of those before the end of the year, and put out a second episode here pretty soon. If not, you can check out the old regular Instagram, TikTok videos coming out pretty regularly. That Tuna Boy link will be in the episode notes. But this week on the podcast, episode 431, Portland singer-songwriter Kyle J. Glenn is on the podcast. Kyle just put out a brand new record called Everywhere is Close to Somewhere Else, produced by my bud and former guest of the podcast, Alex Croson, who Kyle and I gush about during this podcast a bit, and just a really talented dude, Alex Croson. He's whether he's writing his tunes or he's contributing as a musician or a producer on someone else's music, just really great. And it was awesome to jump on the mics with Kyle and get to know him outside of meeting him a few times at shows and just having very brief chats or interactions there over the last year or so. And really appreciate his turns of phrase on his lyrical delivery. He and Alex captured just such a cool feel and spirit to these tunes on this record that he just put out, and just enjoyed getting to hear about the way Kyle approaches songwriting and how his experience as a filmmaker has informed his lens a bit with the storytelling. And just also nice to be back in the podcast studio here recording. It has been a little while, and I'm just home for like 5 days, and just wanted to squeeze one in while I was here. And definitely kind of feels a little weird coming home after being out on the road for a month and not staying in one place for more than a couple days. I think it's hard to kind of just like turn off that kind of mentality, but it's been also really nice to go to some of my regular spots, hitting my favorite diner, just grabbing food from a couple of my favorite spots, and kind of just always really knowing my surroundings and feeling like everything is familiar here is also really nice. So I've been trying to get some hangs in and go to some spots while I'm home, and then hit it again at the end of this week, back out on the road for the first couple weeks of November. And just hope you all enjoy this chat with Kyle. Check out his new record. Grab a vinyl copy from him on his Bandcamp if you're a vinyl fan and you dig this music. I'm assuming that it's Bandcamp Friday, this first Friday of the month, November 1st, which is a great day to support your favorite independent artists, as Bandcamp waives all of their fees that day, and the artists get 100% of whatever you bought. If you spent $25 on that vinyl, then Kyle's gonna get $25, and just a great day to support. And the link for Kyle, all of his music, will be in the episode notes, or go buy a record from one of your other favorite artists. Some people, it's not just music up there with bands. Some of them are putting their T-shirts up there as well. So don't be fooled. It's not all vinyls and digital copies and cassettes and CDs up there. They're selling other goods, soft goods on Bandcamp as well. Sorry, I'm in a very goofy mood, and all the links in the episode notes. And this is episode 431 with Kyle J. Glenn, and we are kicking off the episode with the first track from the record. It's called Parking Lot. It's a track we talk about in the episode, and it comes from Kyle's brand new record, Everywhere is Close to Somewhere. Now let's do the damn thing.
Well, I crept inside my head last night to see what I could find. Little did I know there was trouble on my mind. I woke up to a ransom note written by the blind. And if I send off some cash, I can buy myself some time. I'm driving round in circles, looking for a spot, carving my name across the dirt in this eternal parking lot.
Trusty notes just in case I need them. Do you have any questions about this?
I don't think so.
This thing?
No, I'm excited to talk about whatever we're talking about.
Sweet. I'm excited to also talk about whatever, but also, man, just stoked to have you on and get to know you a bit more, aside from our, our quick conversations in passing at shows, and I know we have like some mutual friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, stoked to have you here. Been listening to your EP quite a bit, preparing for this conversation, and I think I was also just excited from the jump when Alex Croson told me that he was working with you making this record, and I was like, cool. I like really just kind of eager to hear what what he was working on, just because I love his songwriting much, and like just him as an multi-instrumentalist, just a very talented and sweet person. So I was like, all right, cool. Like I'm sure if Alex is working on this thing, then there's probably some good tunes,
yeah, I would hope. Yeah. He's judicious with his time and energy.
But talk to me about what were like the early days of music for you, or like what was your exposure to becoming like a big music fan or like a player of music?
Well, it's really cool because you played Parking Lot on Kink.
Yeah.
As part of the Homegrown series. Is that?
Yeah, it's the Homegrown discovery that we do every week on Kink.
And so I grew up listening to Kink. So it was really rad to like have that experience, because my folks, that was the radio station that was on all the time. So growing up, it was a little bit different than it is today. It was a little bit more like Fleetwood Mac and Alanis Morissette, like kind of alt adult contemporary.
Yeah.
For the 90s.
For sure.
So I grew up listening to that, and I think we just always had the radio on, like in the car or around the home. And so, yeah, just growing up listening to music, I started playing piano when I was in like 3rd grade or something. Got lessons, and that was, my first introduction to playing music. And I sang a lot growing up, did a lot of choir, and found my way into like kind of bringing that into my life. But then I also was making films at the same time, and that kind of took a priority in my life. And so once I kind of hit high school, I stopped practicing piano and focused more on video and also like theater.
And that was happening here, like in Portland? Or?
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in Portland, grew up in Montevilla.
Okay.
Yeah. And went to like Cleveland High School, Da Vinci Arts Middle School. That was a big part of like, just my experience as like an artist and a creative, was like getting to go to Da Vinci, which still exists, over on like 26th and Burnside.
Just art focused.
Yeah, art focused middle school. Instead of PE, we had dance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that where you got like exposed to a lot of stuff with the film world and like opportunities to mess with cameras and stuff like that?
Not really. It never really worked out with my schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like that stuff. Like I met a friend of mine in 4th grade, and he had this vision of like, let's make movies. And so we would just do it for fun, run around Mount Tabor and film, rip-offs of Lord of the Rings and stuff. And then, so I started doing theater in middle school because it just didn't work out with my schedule. So I kind of focused on like the theatrical side of things, and acting, and music, and stagecraft as well.
Okay.
Just being like a technical person as well. And so, but then we kind of kept making stuff on the side. But it was just a lot of exposure to a lot of different things, like block printing and photography. We had a darkroom. I was doing darkroom in 6th grade, which was wild.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that was just a really big, I think, has probably been one of the biggest impacts of just like being a creative person in my life, is like that experience.
Yeah. And having the opportunity and like places to explore that.
Yeah. To get to try all sorts of different things and get that exposure at a young age, where like block printing is a thing I didn't return to until like a couple years ago, but it was something that like I enjoyed when I was in 7th grade, and then put it on a back burner. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I want to do that again. I want to stop like watching movies at night. Maybe I should like try an art project.
What is block printing?
It's like carving some kind of block. It could be wood, or like I do like linoleum, and you like carve it out, and then you ink it, and then you like then you take a piece of paper and put that block like a stamp. It's like making like carving a stamp.
these are pretty long, like labor intensive projects. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be as long or as short as you want it to be, but mine are probably like short, medium length. I'll take like 6 hours to maybe carve something, design something, carve it, and then what's cool about it for a musician is that I'm really into like DIY and like putting the means of production into like the hands of the musician, especially when it comes to merch. So like it's cool because when I went on tour a year and a half ago, I made these ones of this kind of like homeward bound guy, and it says living like I'm leaving on it. So I printed a bunch of these cards, and then I could like write a note on them and hand them out to people that like housed me on the road or played a show with me, or managers at venues, that like I just had a relationship with, is kind of like a little thank you art piece, that was like relatively after the carving is done, pretty not very time intensive for me to like produce. And I made some more on the road too, because my kit was pretty small. So yeah.
So has it always been you've always been like this big appreciator of like art across the board? It's never just been music focused, like outside of playing, like were you always kind of taking in a lot of different forms of art just because of going to that school and like diving into film and things like that?
I think so. I think primarily it was like film and music that have been my two biggest like inputs. And photography. I was always really into photography, and then later it's been that I've become more of an appreciator of like painting, and I think I always enjoyed it, but I was never like actively like, I was definitely like a kid of the 90s, just like music videos, all the time.
So did you actually do much kind of like acting stuff in junior high?
A little bit. We did Newsies.
Okay.
I was just I guess the biggest thing I ever did was in high school. I was Snoopy in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Yeah.
Do you feel like any of that was helpful in like what it feels like for you to be on stage in front of a group of people now when you're playing music? Or
I think so. Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't have said I had like a natural proclivity towards it when I was younger. I feel like I was a pretty shy kid.
Yeah.
But I do feel like probably a lot of the tools that I learned and exercised through that experience in middle school and high school probably have like aided in my comfort when like, there's still like butterflies and stuff, before some shows, but like usually once I like step onto the stage, even when you start loading stuff in at this point, like there's just kind of this natural, like a flow that happens, and all of a sudden like it's the end of the night, and like if you're not mindful about it, like it can flip by. But so I think a lot of that just has come from spending time on the stage, being in front of people as a kid, and then learning to embrace that. Like I do like being in the spotlight as well. Like there's aspects of that.
Yeah. Do you think that is also maybe part of the shyness in some way, of like maybe being more reserved or shy as a kid, and then having this opportunity to express yourself in a place where people are open to that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of my life that involves needing permission to do stuff and I don't know where that comes from totally. It's something I return to though, is like often once I'm giving permission, I can step into a place. Okay. It's hard for me to ask or take the spotlight, but when I'm given the spotlight, and so I think that's definitely a part of it. It's a place where it's okay for me to be the center of attention. Yeah, it's kind of the idea of it, and now I've positioned myself in a way where like that's kind of the thing. That's just part of the job of being a musician. So the permission is there all the time, And now I ask, I'm sending booking emails. I'm like, hey, can I be in your spotlight? But like, it definitely took me a long time to be like, to step into that. So yeah, once I have the permission, I'm pretty comfortable with like owning it at that point. Yeah. Yeah.
And just always like pretty comfortable and felt good about expressing yourself through art. And
it's been interesting. I think like, so I had a band. I did start playing again. My first band was in high school.
Okay.
So this was like 2003, and we were called Quagmire. I had never seen Family Guy, our band was titled after I don't know if it was like New York Times calling the war in Iraq a quagmire or something, but also we made novelty rock songs.
Okay.
Like we made songs. There's a song called Geriatrics about like old folks breaking out of the old folks home and going to the mall, you know, and like, so it wasn't really like it wasn't very like, emotionally complex.
It wasn't like introspective shit. You were just like, okay.
That came a lot later. That came like, again, I kind of put, after that band, after high school, we played a little bit into college, but then we were all doing our own thing. And, so we put the band to bed and I focused on making films. And it wasn't until, I don't even know how many years later, maybe like 8 or 10 years later, I would like do sing-alongs with my friends, you know, we'd play covers and after the bar or before going to karaoke, but like, I didn't really start writing again until like 2013, 14 when I moved down to the Bay Area. And that was the first like time where I started really like diving more into like as a way to process and kind of reflect on what I'm going through and sharing that in some way.
More of that singer-songwriter approach to things.
Yeah. So, and I think, you know, up until that point, maybe writing was kind of a place where I was a little bit more like soul-bearing, introspective, but even a lot of like the filmmaking I was interested in was very genre-based, kind of like, I mean, as a young film student, it was like, you know, Tarantino and like stuff that was very like the cinema of cool kind of like vibe from back in the day of just like, you know, very genre, very kind of like, it's less about, you know, what you're trying to say and more just about how you say it almost.
Yeah.
And like making cool stuff. And, you know, I was always attracted to, especially in college, more attracted to like hard things like Ingmar Bergman or just like the relationships between people like Noah Baumbach and like, but I wasn't making stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like stuff's like also hard and uncomfortable to approach.
Yeah. When you were playing in that Quagmire band, what was your role in that? Were you playing guitar and singing?
I was mostly just singing.
Okay.
Yeah. Singing and dancing around. Big influences were, you know, like, David Byrne.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of just like antics on stage. Yeah. I didn't really play guitar much or
Were you playing piano at all, like through all of that time? I know you like kind of moved away from that, but like, did you maintain any of what you learned as a kid?
It's still in there. Yeah. Like, but I would like to play more. I feel like I'm glad I was trained the way I was trained, but it was definitely like a classical kind of piano education.
Yeah.
And it didn't really translate for me to rock and roll piano. And I still don't, still have this kind of like barrier of like, okay, how do I like play piano that sounds like the Felice Brothers or like the piano that I want to play, the parts that I want to have in the music that I'm writing. I still don't know how to do that. So I'd like to learn some more too, but also, you know, it's helpful being in a city full of musicians that know how to do it.
Amazing players. Yeah. That can also be like, I feel like a little intimidating when you're trying to present yourself as like a player when you have all of these incredible people around you.
For sure. Yeah.
So when you went down to the Bay, did you have a guitar with you?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. I had an Ibanez acoustic electric that I don't remember where I picked it up, probably Trade Up Music at some point, and took it down with me. And I guess I started writing when I was thinking about moving down. There was like potential relationship in the Bay, and like so it was kind of like there was fodder there, and I was up here on my own, and I was like starting to process that through writing.
Yeah.
Had
you done any like outside of music? Had you done much journaling or writing in like creative writing outside of the film stuff that you were working on?
I think I was always kind of attracted to poetry. And I found that and still happens to be like one of the, and by poetry, I guess I just mean like not like abstraction in words, and like, you know, not even necessarily like I would consider some of the stuff I write poetry, but it allows a breaking from like linear thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Into images and stuff. And so I feel like that's kind of where I've always been able to like process without a filter, I guess, unfiltered.
Untethered.
Yeah, unfiltered. Yeah, just being able to like sit down and let things flow. And even now as I write, like I find that's where kind of some of the best stuff comes from, is just like processing that way.
Yeah, I think that's like what I appreciate about your writing a lot, is that it, you know, it isn't always this linear story, or, you know, doesn't feel too on the nose. It feels a little scattered at times, but there's definitely, you know, there's things to attach to for sure, and the imagery is a big part of that. I think especially this particular collection of tunes, when a lot of it is about your road trip and your adventures outside of where you like came from, and especially talking about like leaves changing and the tree colors and whatnot coming from the East Coast right now in the fall months. I was like, yeah, this is exactly like what I just experienced, you know?
Right.
It feels like a good record to throw on while you're doing some cruising.
Yeah, perfect. I still have not seen the changing of the leaves. It's still on the to-do list.
Just you made it feel like you have witnessed it in person.
I do. I mean, I lived in the gorge for a while, and I do think we have a pretty solid changing of colors out
absolutely
there.
Yeah. It's still very nice, but I didn't quite know what people meant when they were talking about this East Coast, like the Northeast, in this time of year, and it was pretty mind-blowing. I was like, we don't quite get all of these colors all the time, everywhere.
Right.
Been thinking about grabbing a Greyhound back east. Really wanna catch the changing of the trees, green to yellow and orange to red. Pile up some leaves and rest my head. But I've been saying that for years. No matter how hard I try, I keep ending up back here, learning what it takes to live alone, trying to build myself a home. Whoa.
Did you feel pretty comfortable from the get-go, like when you started writing a lot in the Bay?
Yeah, I think one thing that happened is that, I'll feel it, where to start. I think it's always funny. I like to preface, like, graduating in a creative arts field in 2008 in Portland, it was difficult.
Okay.
Like, post-recession, also, like, throw a rock and you hit an agency. Like, there's a lot of people doing creative video work in this town. And so when I moved, what was cool is, like, I got my first, like, salary job as a video person at a chiropractic college. And what that equaled was that I had free time and extra income. And that's when I started writing. I took a writing class down there at Freight and Salvage in Berkeley. And so that's where it kind of, like, you know, I kind of been writing on my own, but there's just this infusion of, like, extra income, reminder that I have, like, things that I'm passionate about that aren't, like, film, and things that I'm interested in, like, want to explore, and the ability and time to do that. That was kind of this. And then also, like, I was living in a studio apartment. My friends were 40 minutes away. I was kind of on my own a lot. I don't even know if I had internet. in there. I think I had my phone, but I
Yeah.
don't think I had a internet. I didn't have a TV, so it was kind of like just a good kind of hermetic environment to like start to explore songwriting.
Yeah, just forced to sit with your thoughts.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot of distractions.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like that writing class did for you?
I think one of the things is just like showing up and getting to share, like the importance of like sharing work with other people that are in process. That was cool for me. That's something that I carry today because I really like to teach, and I like to like create environments and facilitate environments like that. And so I think just seeing that work, we each brought something every week and go around the circle and share your song and get some feedback. And
Yeah.
I think tools, exercises, it was my first time working with prompts, and I think, one of the big things was like imagery, definitely like using imagery to ground pretty much like how do you building the narrative, building the world to transport, your listener into the place of the song, to ground them in that world, I think is one of the biggest things I took away from that.
Did it feel like this pretty vulnerable thing to you where you had some hesitation in those rooms, or did it always feel like a good space to do so?
It was very scary.
Yeah.
I mean, sharing a song, especially when you're first starting out in a room full of like mostly strangers, like it was definitely like nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Like hard to like get the words out, maybe, fingers are sweaty, like chords don't play right.
Yeah.
But it was also like, it was a I think, facilitated environment, just of a place where it's like, safe, and you understand everybody's going through the same thing, and we're all learning together. That, nobody was like, there also wasn't any like feeling of like, oh, that person's really good and we all suck.
Yeah, like everybody signed up for this class.
Yeah.
Did that being kind of like the groundwork for your singer-songwriter era of things, have prompts always been really helpful to you in that sense of things, and like remain that way today?
It's been something. One of my favorite prompts from that class was just like asking somebody for a word, a noun. The first one I did was lighthouse, and the song just kind of poured out, which doesn't exist anywhere. But then I used it again a few years ago for this song, and I asked, and feather was the word that came up, and it became this song called Kind Heart that I really love. And so that's been cool. It's easy to forget that like prompts can be so powerful. And this past year I was doing the 52 song club with PDX songwriters. I made it about like 18 weeks before like.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there's people that have been going like all year.
Yeah.
That are like keeping up, and it's really impressive. I had to kind of like focus on getting the album done. And but the prompts, it's really cool. Kind of what, we like to say. A lot of the times I like to say creativity loves constraints, and I think the prompt kind of really helps with that, of just like reeling us in a little bit and giving direction and focus.
Yeah, it does seem like in general, a lot of times creative parameters can be really helpful to zeroing in on something, or not letting your mind wander too much,
Right. Or just, yeah.
Because that's a good thing too, to have the freedom of, everything. But I don't know, thinking about one thing, or just maybe some of the musicians or producers I've talked to over the years that maybe make a specific record saying, I'm only going to use 8 tracks, or I'm only going to use this particular synth patch, or something like that. Seems to bring something different out of you that you wouldn't have maybe explored otherwise.
Right. Or like what we were talking about with like, I'm only going to have these 40 records.
Yeah.
That I'm going to spin, and like, and something, and they're going to inspire each other.
Yeah.
And like some magic will be created from that. Yeah. I think for me, one of the things the prompts really helps with, and this is kind of, it's not really apparent on the new album, but I do preface it with a lot of it's kind of about travel and kind of about this journey, this search for the past decade. But like a lot of the songs I was writing, because I would just like, a lot of the times I'd sit down and start playing cowboy chords and just start singing, and whatever kind of comes up, something would start to come together, and I write that. But eventually what I saw was like every song was about coming home, leaving home, like, and it became a joke even with like my drummer in my band down in Oakland, and you know, he'd be like, "Oh, Kyle wrote another song about leaving home." And so I was not necessarily self-conscious about it, but definitely noticed it. And that's kind of like where prompts have been really helpful in like breaking out of like the tropes and like the like themes that we get into. And then also like that's where that writing, the poetry kind of helps me with processing, or like just like that association where I'm just kind of like letting stuff go that I've been like thinking about and processing. And then when I do it in that format, and then I start writing a song, then I can go back and I can pull that over here. Yeah. That's been really helpful too, as far as the like getting away from just writing the same song over and over.
That eternal search for home.
Yeah.
So are you doing a lot of lyric writing, whether it's like making it into the song or not, doing a lot of writing without any music happening, without a guitar in your hands, or is it primarily happening with an instrument in your hands these days?
A lot of it right now is happening with an instrument. I've just been kind of out of practice and out of flow, I think, on as far as like doing the journaling that I would like to be doing, or you know, the processing I would like to be doing. But also a lot of stuff still comes up, like I have, you know, a note thing in my phone where like stuff just comes up, or like when I'm at a show, you know, and something sings somebody that inspires me, and I write it down, and so there's still a lot of that. I do still feel like my strongest stuff comes when I am separate from the guitar and just processing in a different way that creates again, right, like you know, we have constraints, but then it's also like, how can we break patterns? And I think when I can write, when I can process the things that I'm thinking about and the experiences I'm having separate from the guitar, I have a richer well to pull from when I'm then bringing the guitar into the mix.
Yeah, it almost gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, because just like that chain reaction that starts, you know, when you load the guitar into the hall until the end of the night, right? It's the same thing when I grab the guitar. What's the first chord I play? Probably the C with that added like G on top, you know? I can't remember what it's actually called. The C add 9, maybe, I don't know. But
they're fucking roasting you in the comments right now, Kyle. Yeah. YouTube's going in.
David Robert Burrows would be very disappointed, because I think he already explained it to me. But you know, that's the chord. I just play that chord every time I pick up the guitar, and so like the more I can like do those things separately, I think the richer my songwriting is, and the richer the exploration is. Yeah.
You mentioned that like you haven't seen the changing of the leaves, you know, this thing that like ends up in one of the tunes, and I'm curious, like thinking about this decade of your life that all of these tunes are inspired by, how much of these things were kind of written, like lines were written in the moment of these travels, and how much of it was more reflection or storytelling in some ways about these travels that you had?
That's a good question.
Like, were there a lot of moments when you were out on the road and you're like, I got to write this down right now?
Right. Well, Parking Lot, which is like the lead track on the album, was written driving around Santa Fe looking for a parking spot.
Okay.
Like, I have the phone memos, and I've used it in a few like like a Patreon podcast I was doing, but like the memos where you can hear me driving around, and like I started recording it, humming, and you can hear the blinker as I'm turning corners and stuff. And so like that was very much written on a tour I was doing, and I think got to Taos that night or the next night and kind of started putting Parking Lot together. But also like that note in my phone, the title of it is a sandbox full of stars, and I don't remember where that came from, but it ends up in Parking Lot in like the last verse. So I had pulled that. That was just something that came, and then it like fit in there. Stuff like Running Myself Down, which is the Changing of the Leaves I wrote. That was like one of the first songs I wrote, maybe in 2013 or 2014. I don't remember if it was Portland or Oakland, but it was about this idea of that, like, I wish I could go. I wish I could get out of town, but I keep bringing myself back. And so that was also written in that time of kind of like wanting to get out of town, and trying to think what other, like, Bywater. It's about New Orleans. That was not written there.
It's funny because like I was in New Orleans. I've spent a little bit of time there, and I was just there like last week for a wedding. And I do feel like it does kind of capture the spirit of like what that town is, or the Cajun roots, and just like the bayou, just the way that song is presented. It does feel like that's there,
Yeah, I mean, the goal of that song is, musically, like, hopefully to I wouldn't say that I could ever like emulate what they've got going on down there, but I could like pay homage to it and like hopefully inspire some of the, like, well, it's one of the most joyous places that I've ever been, New Orleans, and like it's also one of the most like depressed places, as economically and otherwise, but like there's just like that chaotic joy and also the bittersweetness of the place that I wanted to like share. And that story isn't necessarily a true story, it's kind of that's definitely like mostly storytelling, this idea of like this guy going to, in my mind, it's about a person going to an old flame's wedding, and it's the nights before the wedding, and he like tries to rekindle it, or makes a mistake and then goes off on a drunk in the French Quarter, and like then wakes up feeling like shit, the next morning or whatever, and everything's still the same, but
as people do in the French Quarter after a night in the French Quarter, waking up feeling awful. But also, just like the architecture there is so unlike anywhere else in the United States. Like, it can feel like you're in a different country at times.
And it's so far away from everywhere else in the country that like you could be in Europe. As far, it takes a long time to get to New Orleans. Where the blues is crowding in, summer heat pushing me towards sin. I can see the sweat on her lips. I leaned in for one last kiss. One last kiss. That fucking kiss. And it's just one night in New Orleans, and I'm alright. It's just one night in New Orleans, and I'm alright.
Do you like writing more of from that storytelling point of view rather than just your personal experience, or do you feel like you appreciate both equally?
I feel like I still am guarded a lot, and so storytelling helps with like guarding my real feelings and stuff. So like a lot of songs I write will be kind of like there's a song called As Friends, which is like, it's about love in a small town and that almost unrequited love. And it was kind of pulled from a few different experiences of people and just living in a small town and kind of having my own feelings about it. But also like, you know, a friend of mine, you know, when you live in a small town and you like separate from a partner, you know, but you're still in the town, or like, you know, like, I mean, it even happens in Portland.
Yeah.
Portland's a pretty small town, you know, you run into people all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of taking some experiences of people, extrapolating from that, and then adding my own kind of like frame of reference to it. All of that still kind of like gets to tell a good story that hopefully connects with somebody, but also kind of like can masquerade my true my tender soul.
It doesn't have to be like incredibly personally revealing
Yeah.
of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, you know, I guess that's part of where I hope that I am moving towards, is continuing to kind of like dig away at that and get deeper into myself and being able to express that. That's kind of where I'm moving, and that's the practice right now. But there's always going to be storytelling involved, because I think that's just kind of, narrative. That's growing up watching films and listening to the songs I like to listen to. Like, I love stories that are moving throughout the course of the song.
Yeah. When you are becoming more revealing of yourself, maybe stuff you're working through or working on right now, do you have to like push back against it sometimes, or is it when it gets too personal, are you usually like, all right, how do I mask this in some way?
There's probably still, I mean, like, yeah, that's what metaphors are good for.
Yeah.
Right? Like painting imagery, but also like get to hide behind it a little bit. But I think it's been mostly a joyous kind of like experience so far. And like a lot of it has come from like therapy and getting to develop, I guess the other part of it is like it's symbolism too that's related to myself, that means something to me, and I can express it fully. But it also might not mean the same thing to you. Just like songs are always going to mean something different to whoever's listening.
Yeah.
But I think there's kind of like maybe just an acknowledgement as I've gotten older too, that like no matter how personal the song is, and I kind of believe this with all art, and I'm exploring it in my songwriting, it's just that like once you hear it, it's kind of yours. It's not really mine, because you're the listener.
Yeah.
You're putting it through all of your filters and life experiences and relationships to the words and images. And so I think, you know, I don't really have to hide.
No.
Because everybody else is going to listen to it through their own experience.
Yeah. It's kind of nice, the art of that style of storytelling too, where it's not this linear thing, or not like this really specific on the nose thing that you've experienced, that maybe it leaves a little more room for that interpretation, or people to attach their own meaning to these stories that you are telling about these fictional characters, whether you've got some personal truths wrapped up in them or not, you know?
Mm-hmm. I definitely had a friend who like was like asking me questions about Bywater, about the lore of the song. You're like, was that person the person in that? And I'm like, oh, you know, like, that's not me. You know, that story is not a true story.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is also that aspect that people, you know, are putting those pieces together. Like, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, my relationship to the words versus your relationship to the words are very different. And I could feel like I'm painting a very clear picture, or a very like opaque picture, and you could be seeing right through it.
Did you always have this this desire to get away from Portland?
No. Initially, I wanted to like bring Hollywood to Portland. I was like a big proponent of like, I guess there was a part of me that was like, I just want to make it happen here.
Yeah.
And like, it wasn't until I left that I realized that I think I needed to leave, or that maybe there was a part of me that also never really planned to stay around, or that I guess like I need to experience things.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily realize that for a long time.
What I don't know. What do you feel like maybe gave you the courage to explore and leave for as long as you did and experience like a lot of different places?
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Oakland for 5 years and Hood River for 5 years.
Okay.
And then also a couple of years in there, it took extended like long trips across the country, trying to find where I wanted to end up next.
Yeah.
And so I think, that thing that kind of pushed the ball was my friends moving and down to the Bay we had a production. We graduated here. We had a production company here. And it was just hard. And they moved, and I felt that call, and I moved after them. And I think I don't know if I would have I don't know what that thing was that there was like the potential for the relationship. That was that was a big call. And so, that was a big motivator. And I guess I've kind of been kind of pulled by the wind of the heart a few times, around the country. And so I guess that's always been a big thing for me. But then also realizing that really it was coming into myself, and that even today I'm of two minds pretty much all the time of I want to be out experiencing everywhere. And I also want to know that my friends could come over every Sunday at 8 a.m. and have coffee and we could jam on the porch. I want to have home, and I want to be out on the road. And so I think there's just a part of me. And then as we traveled a lot as kids, and driving around the country, or not even the country, but going into the Southwest with the folks. And we did a lot of camping and family vacations. And so I think there's, again, part of me that was there's these things that are imprinted on us that we don't really recognize are part of us until you're faced with it again, I guess.
That wanderlust is a little bit a part of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you, through more of the extended road tripping and experiencing different places, do you feel like that has helped you at all develop what maybe that sense of home actually is?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is community, which just can develop anywhere, I think.
Absolutely.
Just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that's the other hard part about wanting to be out on tour all the time, and also wanting to be here. So I moved back in October of last year to Portland, and that choice came because I love the Gorge and I love Hood River, and there's awesome things happening out there, but I needed more music community and more kind of arts first people in my life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sports first, art second.
Yeah.
In the Gorge. And but I was thinking about LA, and I spent a few weeks in LA, and LA was cool, and I could see myself living there. I was down there for 3 weeks, and then I came back and immediately went to Alaska for a week, and I love Alaska too. And I was but I'm not ready to live in Juneau. I'm not moving to Alaska. So I was all right, well,
that's
Portland,
a firm choice.
Yeah.
Going up to Alaska.
Yeah. So, and Portland, I still my relationship with the community in Portland was a little bit fractured because a lot of people have moved away in the decade, or things have changed.
Yeah, I would imagine that the Portland you grew up in and experienced in high school is not the Portland of now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that's the same. I think culturally, there's a lot that's different for sure. But you know, one thing people have asked me in the past, like, how has Portland changed? And I'm like, well, like, it attracts the same kind of people. So yeah, there's more people and there's more 5-story condos and stuff, but like all of the people that are here are still into the outdoors and generally like progressive and like, so that landscape hasn't changed a ton.
Yeah.
Still a lot of creative people, a lot
Yeah.
of talented creative people, a lot of people that are trying to get away from, you know, other parts of the country that are
Yeah.
conservative and
A lot of people that are just, I feel like, trying shit too.
Yeah.
Like wanting to explore their creativity, whether it be like through art or like small business or, you know, restaurants and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a supportive place for that. People want to show up for people doing new stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess the biggest thing is like the people that are here and the people that aren't. You know, the community that I had growing up and in college. And I was lucky enough to like land last October at Mississippi Pizza in the Atlantis Underground community. I met some people through another community called the Columbia Rendezvous that was going on. That was like a honky tonk pickin' potluck once a month for a few months during the summer. And I landed in that and I found, you know, some community, and that has really like just dropped me into that scene. And that's really been helpful in like making Portland feel like home again.
Yeah. That seems like it's popped up as kind of one of the staples of the singer-songwriter kind of open mic community, you know?
Yeah.
I always hear a lot of like rumblings of like what's happening over there, or hear David talking about it a lot, you know? Like, yeah, Tuesday night at Atlantis Lounge. And it's cool that exists.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And it's cool that it's I don't know. I think you can get a lot of different things out of an open mic experience, but it's kind of, I also have not like never attended it, but would you say it's fair that it's maybe some newer people, but also you get some of, you know, the best singer-songwriters in the scene that are like kind of showing up there and sharing new tunes? You know?
Yeah, it's got a great mix. I think what's cool is you can see people that, you know, I would say are, you know, doing really well. Glitter Fox like shows up, you know, every few weeks, and they'll play a tune. Yeah, Kendall's around. Haley Johnson still comes out. Like, so that's really cool. The AM Acoustic Minds. And so it's just like, it's great that you have kind of that it's not necessarily like left in the dust. You know, it's not like people move on. It's like people keep coming back and find value in the community,
or like using that as their workout room of like, oh, this is like a place I'm gonna go and try some new songs and play them in front of people for the first time. And
and it's cool to see a lot of new people too. And it's an interesting vibe because it's a curated open mic is kind of how they're phrasing it. You know, so they kind of are trying to make the best show they can with the ingredients that show up, or who they know is coming, you know. And then they also have a featured songwriter, which is always a cool, either from the community or from outside. Yeah. Which is a nice piece of it. But yeah, it's just it's been a cool, and I think that's kind of where I've been hungry for is community and like and a scene too, you know. Just like seeing the same people, like even if you don't go play on Tuesday night, knowing that you can show up and see people and have conversations is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about going to local shows here after, you know, living here for almost 12 years and participating in the community in some way. Like, I love to go to a show knowing that I'm probably going to run into a friend, especially after being gone for a couple months. And it's like, oh, if I want to like run into people that I know, I'm going to go to a show. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to, you know, after even being here, even it was probably maybe 6 months, you know, I could like go out on my own and run in. I ran into you a number of times, run into anybody that you just see in passing, maybe on those Tuesday nights. But yeah, it's just like last I was fortunate enough to go to a lot of shows this week, and it was just fun to see people multiple nights in a row too, and like get to continue to like build those like relationships.
Yeah, I did like feel that from the jump of like living here.
Yeah,
of going, like I used to go to a lot of open mics when I first moved here and like play music, and it was very much that, you know, like when you see those people the next week, it felt like it was accessible to build that community, and if like you wanted that, you could make that happen and feel that sense of like support, or like just be inspired by all of these people that are constantly making things or bringing new songs every week to the open mic, or you know, and then seeing them progress onto maybe some of the more premier stages around this city, like a Mississippi Studios, or, you know, going to shows at Street Pub or whatever. You know,
I think a big part for Portland for me too is my family's here, so it's like kind of a comfortable place to land too. You know, and it's nice to be back with them, and it's like daunting to like, you know, figure out where I want to. I don't know where I'll end up. Maybe I'll be in Portland for the rest of my life, or maybe it'll end up being somewhere else. It's exciting, but also it's like exhausting. I'm not a fast builder of relationships and community. I'm kind of a slow burn kind of guy. So it takes me a little while. I can't necessarily drop into a room and be everybody's friend. So yeah.
As far as this Everywhere Is Close record, what kind of gave you the sense of feeling of like this, that you were like ready to put together a collection of tunes, and that you wanted to get in the studio and put something together? And
it's a good question. There's like there's this part of me that is like always wanting to like do the next level of a thing, for better or for worse. So part of that is like, we did an EP, Alex and I, with another JJ Reinhold, did an EP in like 2019, released like in COVID, April 2020, and we, you know, it was like 3 years between that and starting work on this album. And I think one is kind of like the next okay, we did the EP, now time for the full length, you know, 9-song 10-song album. Wanting to work with Alex and wanting to like have that experience of like going in on a larger body and processing these songs and exploring them. And, you know, we had a few different thoughts approaching it. It was like, you know, maybe trying to do it all live, or like put a band together. And so then we also kind of like tempered our like expectations with that of like, okay, well, let's just like, instead of going to another studio, let's do it at Alex's and give ourselves the time to dial it in. And I think, I don't know, I think a part of it was just like, oh, it's the next logical step. But also like, it's something I haven't done yet. And I've been doing music now, you know, for a decade, pretty much. Like I've had a couple bands in the Bay, and 2014 was when we started Fennec, which was like an indie folk band down there. And, so yeah, it's been a decade, and I've been doing the solo thing since I moved back in 2019, and we did the EP. And there's a lot of songs too that like, I had a friend, my friend Colleen in Hood River, who I've known since 2007. She was like, there's so many of your songs that I love to hear at shows, but I can't listen to them anywhere. Like B-side I wrote 2013 2014 about having moved and trying to come back, and just how weird it felt coming back to your hometown. And there was nowhere you could listen to it. so I think that was a big part of it too, is like I've got these songs that I've been playing for 10 years that I love, and I want to get them out as well.
You're a slow burn, Kyle.
Yeah.
You know, you said you're a slow burn. You needed some time to make this full length record.
Yeah.
What's it like for you to, how do you feel like you maybe like capture a spirit in a track, if that makes sense to you? Like feeling like listening to this record and knowing that a lot of it is from your travels and your experiences, it often feels like I mentioned earlier, like a road tripping record, or you talking about that, the track that's, you know, kind of wrapped up in New Orleans. Like, is it easy for you to rein that in, or is that, I don't know, is there a struggle there to capture that spirit within a recording?
Capturing the spirit within a recording, that's a interesting predicament.
Like, can you feel that in the, I don't know, does that even make sense to you, what I'm asking you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think my initial answer was going to be start with like the writing process, and I think this comes from my theatrical background a little bit, but like I do feel that like, and from my solo performance, and my performance has always been kind of like based in trying to feel the song and feel the emotions and trying to like get that across.
Yeah.
Much easier in a live setting than in my experience on a record. Records and the recording process can have a way of dampening those things.
Yes. Yes,
so,
absolutely.
So it's a challenge, and I think what's been cool is like knowing that like that it is possible. Like I think this record is the first time where I feel like a lot of that transpired, where I was able to like, it's definitely still not the same as a live show, but that there is like the emotional intensity, or what I'm hoping to convey, or where I want to bring the audience is happening. And I think some of that, one of the things that happened was like Parking Lot, we were just recording scratch vocals and guitar with the drums. There's only 3 tracks that have a live drummer on them, and it just gelled, and I think we kept it. We might have overdubbed the guitar eventually, but like we listened to it and we were planning to overdub everything, but it's like it just felt right on, and I wasn't even trying to like perform because I was like, oh, it's scratch, you know. So it's like it's a little bit more raw, but it just like had some of that emotion where like when you get into the studio and you get into that like that place where you're partitioning the different instruments and stuff, like it's really hard. But I think I give a lot of credit to Alex for his ability to kind of like help also shepherd through the overdubs and the feeling and the arrangements, like to get us to that point. And also I think a lot of stuff he was learning in the studio with Isabeau at the time too, of like how Ryan and Isabeau are working, and like how they're bringing tension in and like to their arrangements and stuff kind of played a large part in like, okay, how do we bring in something here to like counterpoint or to help carry that emotion outside of just the performance, right? Because we have all these other tools now, reverb, compression, dynamics, instrumentation that we can utilize to help carry the weight of the emotion or the feeling at any given point during the track.
Yeah, like there's a lot of feel for sure, like captured in the tracks as far as like the spirit of things. It doesn't feel like it was done in this like real sterile environment that I feel like maybe the studio can bring out in some ways, where it just feels like maybe a lot of the energy gets lost and it doesn't like convey what maybe you're able to express in a live show as far as the feel of things.
It was also a long process. I mean, our first production meeting was in September. I think we did the first week of November, we did our first 5-day like session, and then it came out in September of the following.
Yeah.
And it was like, there was some dark, you know, the dark night of the soul. Like we're like, there was like, it probably wasn't until session 7 where things really started to gel. At some
Yeah.
point, there's like this time where it just like, the switch flips, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, these are working.
Yes.
And we're on the right track. And there's some songs like Sharp Ears and Loose Tongues, which like we saved till the end of our 5 days. We also learned that like 4 days is too long for a session. Like 3 days of like working hard was good. 4 or 5 days we were just exhausted, but we couldn't figure out that song. And then we kept working on it over the course of a few different sessions, and Alex had some great ideas, and it came together, and like now it's one of Alex's like top 3 on the album.
Yeah, that drum machine stuff on that particular track has such a cool feel to it.
It's just kind of out of left field a little bit. I like to call it the Twin Peaks song because like, I mean, it's like, I think it's a little bit, I mean, it's about people talking in a small town. It's like Sharp Ears and Loose Tongues, but also like that, like the vibe of it.
Yes.
I'm like,
absolutely.
So,
yeah. I remember when you and Alex like first started on it, because that was all kind of happening around the time that Isabeau's record was being made, and I was like, oh, how'd it go with Kyle? And just, I remember those like first few sessions, like you were saying, it wasn't until like the 6th or 7th where things started to like gel, and he was just like, yeah, I just don't think we have it like figured out yet. Like it wasn't as easy as just like plugging away from the jump of it.
And I think what's nice is to know that like you can be intentional and put time in, and it doesn't take away necessarily that it's going to feel like constructed.
Yeah.
It still feels like organic, and like, I guess, time and space and all those things really help also give, when you step away from something and come back to it, you kind of lose, as the artist, get some perspective. You're like, oh, yeah, this sounds great. Yeah.
It is really cool too to hear the impact that Ryan Oxford has had on Alex Croson's like maybe production
for sure
style, and like especially that record that they made together last year, the year before, and just kind of hear some of that stuff permeating now in the record that you guys made together.
Yeah, it was really fun. Working with Alex was great, and this was his first full-length project too.
Yeah.
And so that was just, I think, a really cool experience for both of us, because when I moved back in 2019, we connected. We know each other from like, we were ships in the night at a production company in like, like 2012.
Okay.
And then we kind of kept in touch when I was in the Bay a little bit, but I came back and we kind of like became, we were each doing our own thing, but kind of like, I mean, friends, but partners, and like supporting each other in our musical endeavors. And so it was really cool to get to like do this first together, of like him producing these tracks, and really like, I'm a great songwriter. I feel like I have a little bit of a blind spot when it comes to arranging.
Okay.
And so getting to hear, Alex and bringing his ear and his talent, and exercising that, and getting to do a body of work that's more than like 3 or 4 songs, or a single, and getting to like see how they all come together with the concentrated effort of time and space and all of the inputs coming in.
Yeah.
And being like, some of these songs were written a decade ago and some of them were written 5 months ago, but together it all works. And so getting to have that relationship with a producer, who's also engineering and playing most of the instruments on it, was just really special.
Yeah, it's cool that it came from a lot of different timelines in your life, because it does all feel like it's like very cohesive and like it feels good together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other part, too, about like creating that like vibe, or like the energy that carries through the record, right, is also like the framing around it, the storytelling around the record. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's also an important, hearing you, right, responding back to me about the way that I frame the record to you, is like also about like, the search for home and the journey and the road trip, like colors the way that you listen to the album and your interpretation. So all of that starts even before you listen to the record too, right? Like how does this energy carry? Well, the story around what I told you when I emailed you the record, right? Like, so I think that I'm just saying that as like an important thing for me to remember too, of like, cause it can be easy to like not want to do that. It gets so tiring to try to like market or like to pitch the album, but like really it does have an impact on the way that the listener interacts with it.
Yeah, and I think you can do it in a way where you're not like holding someone's hand through it.
Yeah,
it's not like you didn't write like it wasn't like an extended essay about what the record was about. You know, it was like a paragraph that kind of informed
the three. Yeah, it was like my decade-long search for home. Yeah, right. My experiences. Yeah, traveling across the country, looking for home. Yeah,
and just. Like I said from the top, like I was already excited to hear what it was just because I knew that you worked with Alex on it and kind of maybe his first efforts at producing a record in that way. And so like that made me excited about it. What do you feel like was like as far as the chemistry maybe that you and Alex have built, like what is that and like what made him kind of the right person for you to work on this? And I don't know, that's like usually such a vulnerable relationship when you're making something like that with somebody and kind of trusting in them, like what made you trust in Alex, I guess, as especially, him not having like a bunch of like producer credits or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is relationship. Just like years together and workshopping songs together and recording stuff together. We took a Phil Weinrobe's home recording for the songwriter class through School of Song together. So knowing that like, we had some background in like philosophy around recording and hearing his work and just knowing that he's an amazing songwriter and hearing the record that he did with Ryan and just he's super talented. And we did that first EP together and we set a lot of like expectations and like roles and responsibilities there. For me, like often I'm looking, I want a producer to help steer the ship and help the song be what the song is supposed to be. And so we had kind of like building blocks, over the past 5 years of kind of getting to this point. It was cool because like, it was the first time, as artists and as friends, it's always an interesting time when how to value each other, right? Energetically reciprocate or financially. So it was and we had done that in different ways over the years, but this was the first time like I paid Alex, for all the time we spent together. And that was, I think, really like opens up a lot of stuff in a lot of ways, like having that understanding, of like there is time and energy, and there's also like roles and responsibilities that come with that as well, and like understandings and like on both ends. So I think that was like a cool experience to be able to do that, and also to get to like support your friend doing the thing that they love to do, and they're supporting you doing the thing you love to do, and like all boats are rising. I don't know, I was just excited. I think Alex is one of the most talented people I know, so I was stoked that he was wanting to like go on do this with me.
Agreed. Very it's it's cool to see like how many things he is like really good at, like love his songwriting, and through that process of watching him participate in the recording of Isabel's record, and just like one day it's just like, yeah, I play cello, and he just brought the cello. I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you also are really good at cello. Like,
Yeah.
just kind of incredible, you know?
I love the way he thinks about things and the way he hears the world, and
Yeah.
you know, just like and the way he cares.
Yeah. How do you feel like film in general like impacts the music that you make today, or like your storytelling? Do you feel like that's like just always a part of your lens?
Yeah, I think narrative is a big part of how I approach everything, and storytelling is kind of outside of film, outside of song and art. Story is kind of the biggest thing in my life, like the importance of story and the importance of us being able to like share our like I another thing I do is I teach digital storytelling. Digital storytelling is a very like low bar to entry version of video making.
Okay.
But a lot of it's based on like personal narrative and I would call memoir. And I had experience taking a workshop like that where I, for the first time, really made a personal video, kind of just like songwriting. But the amount, like how powerful that is for us to like connect to our own story and to take our experiences and recognize that we have insights to share and we have experiences and that we can share those with other people.
Yeah.
One, just the power of like understanding that our experiences are important in this world as a person, just for ourselves. And then two, the second part of that is then sharing that with another person or listening to their story and reflecting back and building that connection and community and sharing our human experience. Like that's, I think that's how I see me helping the world be a better place, is like fostering storytelling. So, narrative storytelling, I can't get away from it.
Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah.
Is there always sort of a visual in your head as well when you're writing music or making these tunes? Is it hard to not see something outside of the audio?
Yeah, there's always, I think, a movie in my head, you know, for these songs, which is funny because like trying to make a music video for myself seems like one of the most daunting things in the world. Sounds terrible.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's like hard to, I think, disconnect in the way that I feel like to be objective enough to like, I don't know. Some people do it, obviously. And maybe I'm just scared that I'll fail. Or maybe I just need to like give it a shot and like make something cool and it'll be great.
Yeah. It also makes sense though that you feel so attached to all this that maybe it's hard to like have the perspective that maybe you would have making a music video for someone else that you don't have any attachment to, and just being 100% objective towards the thing.
Yeah, and I feel like I always appreciate I know some musicians don't like music videos and stuff because of the relationship that it adds to for the viewer to the music, but like I'm always curious about other people's interpretations, and I love collaboration. So like I like the idea of like getting somebody else's take that could have a totally outside vision, or the same thing as like Alex bringing his, really helping the song be closer to, I think, the intent of the song through his producing, right? I think once again, doing what we can in service of the song. I think it's hard for me sometimes to like figure out how to package and brand all the pieces that maybe, you know, having an outside eye and aesthetic, or like could like kind of see like that recognizes what I'm putting together. Here's my pastiche of Kyle J. Glenn, and here's all of the elements, and that they could distill that and help pull that into some visual pieces. I think is kind of the like, that's the hard part for me, is I'm kind of like this collage artist and I have all these things that inspire me and I'm throwing them at the wall, but to necessarily see the like shape that they're making or like what other people are taking away as far as like that constellation of stars that I'm putting up in the sky. I think that's what like having a relationship with Alex as a producer is. Working with other visual artists is like helping me kind of distill that constellation of Kyle into other media.
Something palatable.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that's going to touch people and inspire them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to have people around you that can help like rein that in and focus it down and figure out what those restraints need to be.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, it's a cool collection of tunes, dude. I'm
Thank
glad that
you.
we got to, sit down and have a real conversation outside of just being in a music venue or at a house show running into you. And just have been enjoying listening to it for sure. I want to play the episode out with Rosie.
Oh, sweet.
Last track on the record.
Yeah.
You remember anything about this one coming
Rosie.
together or what?
Yeah.
What inspired the writing of this one?
Rosie's a really cool track for me. It's a funny one. It's another one of those like, combinations of things. This girl that kissed me in the back of a truck in Anchorage. But a lot of it was written about walking around the Deschutes National Recreation Area where it comes into the Columbia. And a lot of it it's a very optimistic song. And it's still about, finding home. But yeah, it's just kind of that imagery of like hiking around those hills in Central Oregon, taking deer trails. I was doing a lot of we were just like wandering around these hills, seeing where the things go, building cairns, finding these guideposts, to lead me home. And then the thing that at the end of the day, the song is really about like, about finding my truth and how I want to live and what's important to me and what I desire and what I need and anchoring into that. And then knowing, that at least that I'm on my own path and I'm forging that path.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Well, I'm excited to see how you continue to progress and like just just to see how you continue to like maybe reveal yourself and push up against that a little bit,
Thanks, Dan.
And I'll put all the links in the episode notes. Everywhere as close to somewhere else is the collection of tunes. It's available on all the things. You got some vinyls.
Yeah, got
you
vinyls.
Gifted me one. It's right here, right behind us. So if you're a collector of records, as I unfortunately am, you can get one of those. Kyle, we end every episode of the podcast with the guest saying the tagline for the show, which is "It's a program." It's the one time I'll ask you to look into this here camera. You can deliver it however you would like. The Kyle J. Glenn, "It's a program." We can properly sail this thing out.
It's a program.
He nailed it, everybody. It's Kyle J. Glenn. Check out the record. All the links in the episode notes. We're playing it out with Rosie, and that's the Jelly Jams, and we will catch you on the flip side, Portland, or wherever you are listening from. Cool, man. Did it.
Woohoo. Taking deer trails up the draw, and there's whiskey on my breath. I've been hiking these hills, but I can't hide from myself, oh no. Slipping down through the drainage, feeling kinda high. But that's just endorphins, they're getting me by, oh no. Oh no. And I remember Rosie, always making the grade. Thought I was born to follow, till I lost my way.